How can a routine induction transform into a life-altering event? In this episode, we hear one mother's profound experience with severe birth trauma and neonatal complications. Join us as we speak with Katie, who bravely shares her story of experiencing a uterine rupture without a prior C-section following the use of Pitocin. Katie recounts how both she and her daughter suffered birth trauma and medical negligence, resulting in her daughter's severe disabilities and the eventual loss of Katie's uterus. Katie opens up about the warning signs that were dismissed, her struggle for justice within a flawed system, and how these experiences ignited her passion for educating others. She now dedicates herself to raising awareness about birth choices and the potential risks associated with Pitocin use. Her powerful narrative sheds light on critical issues in maternal health care and offers a new perspective on birth interventions and patient advocacy. This episode contains detailed descriptions of birth injuries and discusses infant health challenges. We urge listeners to ensure they're in a suitable emotional space before continuing. Stay tuned for this eye-opening and emotional conversation that may forever change how you view childbirth practices. The Golden Hour Birth Podcast, a podcast about real birth stories and creating connections through our shared experiences. Childbirth isn't just about the child. It's about the person who gave birth, their lives, their wisdom, and their empowerment. We're Liz
and Natalie,
the Golden Hour Birth Podcast, and we're here to laugh with you,
cry with you,
and hold space for you. Welcome to the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. I am your co-host, Liz.
And I'm your co-host, Natalie. And today we have Katie joining us from Virginia. Thanks so much for coming on tonight, Katie.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and share a little bit about you and your family.
Okay. So my name is Katie. I'm 35. I live in Virginia. I have 6 children altogether. I have an oldest who's almost 14. His name is Lexi. I have a son who's 9. His name is Gannon. I have a 6-year-old named Amelia and a 4-year-old named Jolene. And then I have 2 little girls in heaven named Emmy and Meadow. My youngest, Jolene, is severely disabled due to a birth injury. So I am her 24/7 caregiver while her dad works almost 7 days a week to support all of us since there is no longer 2 incomes to our household.
Yeah. So if you kind of want to tell us a little bit about starting a family and kind of how your first 3 pregnancies and births went.
So honestly, family planning wasn't my thing back then. My oldest is not my current husband's child, neither is my son. So those 2 children are his stepchildren. The only 2 children that are his are Amelia and Jolene, and then the 2 little girls that we had that passed away. My oldest, Lexi, I had a textbook pregnancy with her. Like, no events happened whatsoever. I was induced at 40 weeks. I say it was 40 weeks and 3 days. My doctor was super cool. She was like a hippie, old school, didn't believe in medicine or anything like that. Like, she didn't even let me take Tylenol when I was pregnant for back pain. So when she induced me, she was very cautious with it. Her main goal was that I was young, I was uneducated, I had no idea what I was doing. She wanted me to have a birth that didn't traumatize me. I remember her always saying, I want you to have a birth that you can look back on and smile, that you're young and this is your first birth. And she did just that. Like, there were hardly any interventions besides the Pitocin and the epidural. I had a perfectly fine labor and a perfectly fine delivery. I have 0 complaints about it whatsoever. And then my son, I had more of an augmented labor more than an induced labor because I was 4 centimeters when I got to the hospital. So they did start me on Pitocin, and I don't know. There really wasn't a reason, to be quite honest. They just started me on Pitocin. Anyway, so once I started feeling the Pitocin contractions, I did get an epidural. And once I got the epidural, his heart rate started to tank and it just was very unstable. So they were flapping me back and forth with the peanut ball. They did use the fetal scalp electrode and I got to 10 centimeters really quick. And the doctor was basically like, you only have a couple minutes to push your son out because his heart rate is very wonky. So she did do a rather large episiotomy and I was able to push him out really quick. He ended up being okay. He had 1 funky APGAR score, but overall he was okay. We only had to stay 2 days and then we got to go home. And then Amelia's birth was an induction. Um, it was so painful. Really, the biggest thing that I remember from her birth was how painful it was. We tried an epidural, but it didn't work. So I had 0 pain meds through that Pitocin induction. And I just remember screaming in agony the whole time. Like, it was so, so painful. I was exhausted after her birth. Like, I didn't even hold her until she was a few hours old. So I was so tired. And then Jolene's birth ended just horrifically. She was an induction, a 39-week induction. And the Pitocin caused my uterus to rupture. And if you know anything about a uterine rupture, a catastrophic emergency in obstetrics, there's just minutes. There's less than 10 minutes to get, to get the mom into the OR and get the baby out. Otherwise, the baby can die, the mom can die, or the baby can suffer brain damage. That's what happened to my daughter, because rather than listening to me when I told them, like, something is wrong, like, I'm feeling some serious pain, and it was a contraction pain, like, it wasn't coming and going. There was no rest in between it. It was just constant, and it kept getting worse. And then her heart rate started doing this on the monitor, and then it would, like, dip, and it would stay dipped. And they still just kept saying that I was being dramatic, like, I'd given birth before, I should be used to it. They didn't care to address it or assess it whatsoever. So it was about an hour and 48 minutes from the time my uterus ruptured to the time that she was born. So when I was pushing,
40 minutes.
And the only reason why we made it that long was because of her head placement. Her head placement was in a specific spot that kept me from bleeding out. So I was bleeding internally, which made me bleed a lot lower than I would if her head had been, like, shifted to the right or shifted to the left. I would have bled out immediately, but I didn't because of her head placement. But the doctor, same thing. She didn't care either. She was like, this is easiest for everybody. You're going to try to push. So she forced me to push. And I think I pushed maybe 5 times, maybe 5. And I was passing out in between pushes. And then the last push, I passed out and I just didn't wake back up. Like, they had to shove the ammonia swabs up my nose. They were giving me oxygen, all sorts of stuff. But I just wasn't waking back. And my husband said they had no urgency whatsoever. Like, they weren't throwing stuff on the bed and, like, running out. He said they just, like, casually unhooked me. They were, like, trying to wake me up as they were doing all this. He said the doctor walked out and just looked pissed. Like, she looked pissed. So they just rolled me back there. He said they waited for him to get the bunny suit on and everything. Like, there was 0 urgency at all. But once they did open me up, he said they kicked him out and they, like, stood in front of the door so that way he couldn't look in because he was trying to peep in. He's like, what the absolute fuck is going on right now? Because he thought that we were just going back for a regular C-section because they kept saying, it's fine. These things happen all the time. Like, she's fine. Everybody's fine, which, we were not fine whatsoever. So she was born completely purple, limp, no effort to breathe, no heart rate, no nothing. The NICU doctor did come in and he worked on her. He worked on her for a while, 20 minutes, 25 minutes maybe. He did CPR a few times. Like, he would get her back and then she would flunk out again. And then he'd do CPR and get her back and she'd flunk out again. When he did get her back, he intubated her. He started umbilical lines. He started cooling her. Like, he started doing everything that a bigger hospital would have done to save her, even though it was a smaller hospital with just, like, like a standard NICU, not like an overnight NICU. Mm-hmm. So she did end up suffering severe brain damage. They repaired my uterus, but they did it, like, in a way to where my uterus it didn't look normal. Like, I did end up having a hysterectomy in September of 2021. Jolene was born January of 2020. And the doctor who did my hysterectomy said he has no idea why they did what they did. He said, your uterus was, like, upside down. He said, so the reason when you would have periods and you would bleed so much is because your uterus was just so, he said it was so fucked up. He'd never seen a uterus like that before. I was like, oh, I'm just not surprised. Said they should have taken it out. He was like, your scar was huge. Your scar was just so big that they should have just taken it out. It would have saved you guys so much anguish, so much pain. They should have just taken it, but they didn't. But now I no longer have a uterus. Thank God. And Jolene is 4. She does have severe brain damage. She has cerebral palsy, epilepsy. She cannot swallow. She's G-tube dependent. She's got hypertonia, and she more than likely won't make it to adulthood because of the whole induction.
So walk me back. Any pregnancy complications with Jolene? Like, did anything kind of pop up, or was it kind of just like you're a good candidate for a 39-week induction.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
That's exactly. Her pregnancy was beautiful. Like, I don't remember having any back pain. Like, I was active. We would do things. I went to the gym. Like, her pregnancy was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I had no issues whatsoever.
And then I remember hearing that like you and your husband were kind of like sitting in the car for that induction and just felt like really like there was a dark cloud kind of hanging over your heads. Can you kind of bring me back to that moment?
So that moment exactly, we weren't even on time for my induction. We were late. We were almost 30 minutes late, and like we're quiet the whole way there. There wasn't a happy feeling like there was before. Like we would be driving like so excited. I had makeup on, like I was ready. I was like, I can't wait. And this time we were like, something just doesn't feel right. Like this, it just doesn't feel like we should be having a baby. Something feels weird. Like we couldn't explain it, but it just felt very off, felt dark. Like everything felt heavy. We just didn't feel right. And we had those feelings like 6 to 8 weeks leading up to the birth too. On Thanksgiving, I wrote a will, like a written will in my friend's kitchen. I don't know why. I mean, obviously I know why now, but I couldn't explain it. I was like, I feel like something really bad is going to happen. I don't know to who, but I was like, if it's going to be to me, I want something written out so that way people know what to do with my kids and stuff like that. Because I just felt weird. Like I just felt like somebody was going to die. I felt very like these really dark feelings, and I know now it's called, there's a word for it. I can't remember. They use it in the healthcare field where
doom.
Yeah, where people know that something bad is going to happen to them, like right before it happened. Can't remember what it's called though. I'm sure I'll remember after we get off here. But there's a term for it where impending doom. That's what it is. Like the patient knows that something is going to happen to them. They can't explain it and they don't know what it is. They just have these really dark feelings. That's exactly what it is. Like,
yeah. I remember one of our other birth trauma survivors saying that like during her pregnancy, she just felt like she had to follow all these Instagram birth trauma accounts because something was going to happen. And it's like, like our maternal instincts, one, and that impending doom that you said is like, I mean, those two.
It's crazy.
You know it.
And I told my nurse too, like I told her, I was like, I just don't really feel right. I was like, I'm just worried. I kept telling her I couldn't explain. I was like, I just feel worried. Like it's not anxiety. I just feel very worried. And I just want to make sure that nothing happened. And everybody was just like, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. No, just kept hearing, it's fine. You're fine. Everything's
Yeah. I think the one who did have the birth trauma, she said during her interview that she's also a labor and delivery nurse. And she said that one of the things that they taught her in nursing school was if a patient tells you that they feel that, take them seriously.
Yep, it's true. All nurses everywhere, they're all taught that. And if a patient tells you something's going to happen to them, you need to take them seriously because it's weird. It's like instincts. They just know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And like the fact that you were just continuously told, it's fine, it's fine. Like all of your feelings were just pushed under the rug, which obviously is the last thing that feels good for us as humans.
Yeah, it just felt very like in your most vulnerable moments, like when you're giving birth, you're at their mercy. You're there in their house at their mercy, asking for help, and to just be told you're fine, you're being dramatic is just like, it's such a bad feeling. Like you're literally there asking for help and you're being denied. And it just makes sense.
Yeah. So do you want to walk us through kind of the timeline and everything that happened from when you got to the hospital and started your induction?
So we got there early. I think it was like a 6:30 check-in. We got there a little bit late. I don't even think the induction started till a few minutes before 10. If I remember, it was a few minutes before 10. Labor was fine, like from the previous inductions, I knew it was going to be painful. So I was a little bit more mentally prepared. So I was just getting IV narcotics. I didn't want the epidural. So I was handling it okay. Like things are fine. It was labor. It hurt, but it's not excruciating. And then I want to say I was closer to the end, maybe 8 or 9 centimeters, probably closer to 9, I think. And I just felt this like excruciating pain, like a pain that I can't even describe. There are no words to describe it. And it was like localized right in my abdomen on the right side, right where my rupture did happen. And I was telling the nurse, I was like, this is wrong. Something isn't right. Like, this pain hurts really bad. And I kept telling her, not in my vagina, it's in my abdomen. These aren't contraction pain at all. Like, this is pain. She kept saying, well, we'll just give you more pain meds and we'll monitor you. You'll be fine. Like, you're probably just getting closer, and this whole circus went on. Oh my Lord. Well, I think it was at least an hour. It was an hour minimum, where I'm like pleading with her. I'm literally calling her in my room every couple minutes and telling her, like, something is wrong. Like, please help me. I'm going to die. I'm telling you, I'm going to die. And she just kept insisting that I was being dramatic and I was staring at their moms and I needed to stop screaming and that things would be over with soon. She just was very dismissive. So I was left there with my rupture for about an hour. Jolene's heart rate kept tanking too. Like, you can see on the strips where she definitely feels the rupture. You can see her going through her reserves until she's just like right there at 40 and doesn't come back above 40 whatsoever. When the doctor came in, the only thing that she was really concerned about was the fact that I wanted to keep my placenta, because I had it on my birth plan that I wanted to keep it. I was going to have it encapsulated. I paid the lady to do it and everything. And she just kept saying, you can't keep your placenta. That's disgusting. You can't keep it. It's unsanitary. You're going to kill yourself. Like, the only thing that she was worried about was this placenta that I wanted to keep. Not the fact that I was telling her, like, please help me. Even my husband was like, this is not normal. This isn't normal. She didn't do this in our last birth. Like, this isn't normal. Somebody has to do something. And they were just like, it's push pain. It's push pain. So she then continued, like I said, to make me push. She even used the vacuum, because my husband said when I would push, her head would come down. And then when I would stop pushing, she would get like sucked back up like a vacuum cleaner. So he said that they used the vacuum, which they did. So she used this vacuum 3 times and it popped off 3 times. After the third pop off is when I passed out and did not wake back up. And they just, casually walked me back to the OR for a C-section. But like I said, I don't remember anything. After passing out, I don't remember anything at all. I know I did have general anesthesia. I don't remember much after waking up either. I do know that they did like vigorously wake me up, because when I woke up, they were already there with the transport cart and the travel NICU doctors and all that. And they were like, we have to take your baby to go. I forget what they said. They said something, but they used different terms for the cooling therapy, because they had to cool her. There was only a 6-hour window from the time your event happened to the time the baby needs to receive the cooling intervention. So they woke me up and they said, you only have a couple minutes to say hi and bye. The only thing I remember is like touching her foot and crying, because they had no idea what happened at all. So they took her and I was just really in and out. I was really groggy. They had me, on IV morphine and stuff like that. So when I woke up the next day, the doctor never came in at all. She was like a ghost. She just disappeared. The nurse came in and sat on my bed and she was like giggling. She was like, I can't believe I didn't catch this. I teach about this in nursing school to students. I'm just surprised I didn't catch it. And I was just like dumbfounded. I was like, I can't believe that somebody, a nurse, would say something like that. So we kicked her out of the room. She never came back. We never saw anybody, any of them ever again, except for the NICU doctor who did save her. He came in every day until I left, and checked on her, checked on me. And I want to say they reversed the cooling on the 3rd day. So the 3rd day is when I signed myself out to go be with her. And crazy enough, I asked for my records before I left too. Like, because the doctors up there were saying, you need your records, we need your records. And they kept saying, your record is too thick, we can't give it to you. Like, we have to put it together and then we have to print it out. We have to charge you per paper. And I wasn't in the right state of mind. I had no idea that they were just lying to me. I had no idea. I had no clue. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just call back in a week then. And it took like 6 months to get my records. It took a long time. And
I remember I listened to you on another, we both did, that you, like, the fact that nurse came in and said that literally made me so angry for you. I want to go out there and find her and strangle her and do very bad things and say very bad things. Because that's just the fact that she was laughing. Are you serious?
Yeah, that's what baffles me. Like, if you knew that you messed up and that if you knew that you messed up, why laugh about it? Why I think it's funny. Like, just sit down and say, I am so genuinely sorry. I can't believe I missed that. I am so sorry. Not, oh, it's funny that I missed it. Like, no, it's not really.
Yeah,
You actually
well,
could have killed my kid and you could have killed me. It's not funny. Like, you could have just
Yeah.
said sorry and left, and that's it.
yeah.
He did that was just, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the look on her face, the look on my face. I know what I looked like. I remember exactly what it looked like outside. Like, I remember that exact moment when she did that to this day.
And then she tampered with your records, right?
Yeah, her and the doctor. They put in there things that didn't happen and left out things that did happen. Like, she failed to put in there that I was screaming in agony, like literally asking for scissors because I was going to cut myself open. They did not put in there that my husband was asking for help. They failed to put in there that we were like begging for help for a long time. She put in there that patient was comfortable with IV narcotics. I think it was Stadol. And that's it. I was like, that never happened. And then the doctor put in there that I only passed out because I was exhausted. They literally said that the need for C-section was because of maternal exhaustion. No, it wasn't. No.
How do you live with yourself?
Well, apparently she's done this to lots of people, that this doctor is not good. After sharing my story, and still to this day, I have women reach out to me and they tell me the stories of her delivering them, the things that she's done to them. I had a girl just reach out to me, I'm not even kidding, like 2 weeks ago. It said that she delivered her baby in January of 2022 and that she needed a C-section and this doctor would not give her a C-section. She said that because she's a nurse, she knew that her baby's heart rate was not, it wasn't appropriate, like he wasn't recovering appropriately. And she kept saying, like, my son he's not doing so good. I need a C-section. I don't know what's wrong, but my son is not doing so. And she just would not give it to her. Would not give it to her.
What in the world?
In your records, it doesn't state that you had a uterine rupture?
It does eventually. When you get to the surgical note, it says something about like a uterine rupture found upon, I don't remember the words exactly, but they said that they found it after I was open and they were doing the C-section. They made it seem like it was a huge surprise and they had no idea that I ruptured, even though like I had every classic sign besides the external bleeding. But again, her head was in the most perfect spot that it kept me from bleeding. It would have taken a simple ultrasound, like an external one. They could have just brought the ultrasound machine upstairs, like scanned me and seen all the blood, and boom, things could have happened so much quicker than they did. But they didn't. That's the part like that will always eat me alive, I think. Like that's the main thing that like keeps me, I think, from healing completely, is the fact that they could have prevented this had they just listened to me. None of this like would have happened. Maybe her brain damage wouldn't have been so severe had they just listened. I'll never understand that. Why not just listen?
Yeah.
It's your job.
Yeah. With her heart rate dropping so much too, and like you said, it was on the strip. Like, why isn't that enough to be like, oh, we need to do something?
Yeah, they just kept saying it's easier to do a vaginal birth. It's easier. Everything is easier. If you can get her out, it's easier. Like, what is easier? Who cares what's easier? How about what's best for everybody? What's best? It doesn't have to be the easiest route. It can be the hardest route. Like, let's do what is best for everybody. And they just kept saying in the notes that they made excuses for it. They kept saying that I was shifting positions so that her heart rate wasn't a true heart rate because I was moving and the heart rate monitor was picking, I think she said something like it was picking up my heart rate over hers.
40 is not a good heart rate for either of you.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking in my head too. Like, yeah, sure. I'm totally alive at 40.
Yeah.
Come on. It's insane. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't read the whole thing, but I did read the gist of it. Maybe they said that it was in the 40. I don't know. It was in like the very last like 10 minutes. So who knows? I'm sure they made an excuse for it. It makes me sick, honestly. When I saw the very first sentence when she wrote that I was comfortable, I I couldn't even read the rest when I saw it. I was like, I don't even want to. I don't even want.
Yeah.
It took forever to finally read them. Like I just started reading them. I think it was last year. Honestly, it was last year because it just made me sick. Like, how do you do that? It's one thing to really fuck up at your job, but then to cover it up is another. And it's not even rare, you know, like that poor mom in Georgia who had her baby's head ripped off and the doctor, they covered it up by putting a hat on the freaking baby. Like, how do you guys, we get, like, I get it. Everybody's human. We all make mistakes. We all do. But to cover up your mistake is what makes it a problem. If you own up to it, most people will forgive you for it, but covering it up, people are not going to forgive you for that. That's like my main thing too. Like, why cover it? If you made a mistake, just own up to it.
Yeah. Yeah. How long was it after you were finished, you know, or like the doctors were finished operating on you that you woke up? And then like how long? You said like 3 days?
It was 3 hours was how long my surgery was. And then they woke me up directly, like literally they were still unhooking me from the OR stuff. Like they were putting on the leg compression to like, they were doing all that because she was ready to go. Like they had already gotten there, put her in the transport cart and hooked her all up before I even woke up. So it was very, very fast. Like as soon as I was in the room, they were doing like the chest rub thing to wake me up. And not the doctor who delivered me, the doctor who was there to get Jolene was like, I have to take your baby now. So you can see her real quick, but we have to go. So it was just a couple minutes. And then when she left, I went back out. I was in a lot of pain. I was exhausted. I was only at that hospital for 3 days. Because it happened on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I want to say they rewarmed her on the 4th. Yeah, so I wasn't in there long. I knew that when they were rewarming her, I was going to leave anyway. And I told them that whether I was ready to go or not, I was going to leave. Because when they rewarm the babies, there's like a 50-50 chance that they'll make it. So I was like, if she's going to die, I want to be there. I want to watch it over FaceTime.
Yeah.
It was about 3 days.
So she was in a different hospital.
Yeah. It was an hour and a half north where I was.
And was your husband with her?
Yeah. I made him stay with her.
Wow. So you were just alone?
No, I had some of his friends come in and out. I had one of my friends come in and out. Like I had people with me, but I wanted more people to be with her. Want her alone in case something happened, or like even if she could feel presence or anything. I was like, I don't want her by herself. Like I'm fine. I'm an adult. Like I can handle myself. So like I was okay with just random people being in and out.
Yeah. Were you ready to leave, or did you sign yourself out?
Yeah, no, I told them that I was going to leave. I said, you can either, give me my papers now, or I'm just going to get up. I'm just going to hook myself and I'm going to leave. So they did. They knew I was going to leave. I think that they gave me my prescriptions and I left before they even gave me the discharge papers. So I wasn't supposed to leave. I was supposed to stay for 5 days. But, I did. I told them. I was like, when she's going to be rewarmed, I am leaving. Whether you like it or not, I'm going. And
So what was her NICU stay like? What did that look like?
She was in there for 68 days. It was very like wishy-washy, like her first like week or two were really scary. We didn't know anything. We had no idea. They were like, she has brain damage here and there, and she's going to have cerebral palsy and she might not live. Like she was sent home on hospice because nobody knew. So it was just, it's hard to find words to describe it. It was scary. It was really scary. We didn't know.
Yeah.
I had no idea how to take care of a baby like that. I didn't know anything about HIE or cerebral palsy or epilepsy. I didn't know about any of that stuff. She had a couple setbacks too. Like there was one time we were supposed to go home. She got sick. They don't even know how she got sick, but she got sick. So we had to stay. She did have to have surgery for a G-tube, and she had a Nissen done as well. That's kind of like where they tie the top of the stomach to keep them from regurgitating for acid reflux. What else? We had to be trained on the G-tube. We had to be trained on like oxygen because she did go home on oxygen as well. Suctioning, all that. It kind of like, I don't remember all of it. I remember the major parts, but I don't remember all of it. And God was just like living in flight or fight. I was terrified. And I had 3 other kids.
Yeah.
And I didn't know, it's hard to figure out where do you spend your time? Do you stay with your new baby whose life is on the line? Or do you go be with your kids who are already there and they're living and they don't know what's going on either? Because at this point, they didn't really understand. Like, they knew something had happened, but they didn't understand the big picture. So my oldest went to go stay with her friend for the 68 days we were there. My son went to go stay with his dad. And then our daughter, Amelia, we were in the Ronald McDonald house. So we would swap back and forth. I would stay with Jolene overnight, and Robbie would go stay with Jolene during the day. So I would have Amelia on opposing schedules to when he had her. Eventually, he did have to go back to work too. He did work pretty close to the hospital, which sucked because she went a period. He left, I think, around like 5:30 in the morning. So I would leave at 5:30 to go stay with Amelia. And then he wouldn't get back until 3:30, 4 o'clock, something like that. So she was alone without one of us for, so what, like 5:30 to almost 4 o'clock. Like, it was almost 12 hours. This was like the last 2 weeks. That was really, really hard too. Because she needed to be suctioned constantly. Like, I was like, what if somebody doesn't get to her soon enough to suction her? Like, what if she has a seizure? What if she has a heart attack? Like, what if something happens? So the NICU journey was very, very scary. It was very scary. It's not something I would wish on anybody. And to hear, like, you're in a ward with a bunch of other babies. When another baby would die or another baby would go home, it was really difficult. It's a difficult time. I'm so glad it wasn't longer than 68 days, because part of me felt like I was not going to make it. It was really stressful. Mostly because I was just scared for her life.
Yeah. Wow. How has it been? I mean, obviously now you are so knowledgeable in like a lot of the areas because it's been 4 years. Like, how was that kind of bringing her home, kind of adjusting the kids back into the house? Like, how was all of that?
That was scary too.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what was more stressful, the NICU stay or adjusting to home life, because we're bringing home all this equipment. Like, she had oxygen, she was on a pulse ox, she needed a suction machine, and she had a feeding pump. Like, it was a lot to get used to. And then to try and teach all my other kids, like, hey, first of all, you guys can't pick her up. You can't pick her up. 2, like, all this equipment, you can't touch this. Like, it was, I think the hardest part was trying to adjust the other kids. Because before Jolene, like, we were gone like all the time. We were always going to the playground or going to the store or going here, going there and all that. So getting them to adjust to being home all the time was one of the hardest things, because they just didn't understand at first. It was just a lot of trial and error, a lot of doctor visits the first year. Like I said, she was on hospice, so a lot of doctors and nurses always in the house. It was a lot to get used to. Just a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you said that you have 2 girls in heaven. Like, how did you get pregnant? And
yeah,
because you're like, they put everything in wrong, they did everything wrong. Like, how did you get pregnant? And then I don't know. I'm just kind of curious on that part.
When I left, they told me that I would not be able to get pregnant. Like, I do remember them telling me that if I had any more plans to have kids, I would have to get used to the fact that I would not be able to have kids. They literally said I would not be able to get pregnant anymore. So I'm thinking, like, okay, they did something surgically. I'll never be able to get pregnant. But then I did get pregnant. And, like, the pregnancy was fine. Like, there were no issues, And then Jolene, literally, we were driving home from her 1-year brain MRI, and I went into labor. And by the time I got to the hospital, there was no stopping it. And it was so early. It was like 16 weeks, something like that. So I did deliver her. They still don't even know how I got pregnant, to be quite honest.
But you were before the 14 weeks?
Huh?
You knew that you were before the 14?
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew within, like, I think I was 6 or 7 weeks. Like, I always know, because the first thing that changes is my sense of smell. Like, everything smells really, really bad when I'm pregnant, and that's the only time it ever happens. So I knew as soon as things started smelling funky, I was like, there's no way. I was like, I'm pregnant. And I took a test, and I was just convinced that it was wrong. I went to the doctor within days of taking the first test, and they were like, oh, no, you're definitely pregnant. I was like, okay. But yeah, so I did go into labor with her. and then gave birth to her. And obviously she was way too young. She was not going to make it. And we were not trying. And I got pregnant again. And same thing happened. My pregnancy was fine, no issues. Like I was trying to take it easy and be like on bed rest as much as possible. Like my activity level was decreased drastically. And I went into labor randomly. Like at first, I thought it was just some pains related to pregnancy, like pain related because, I had scarring on my uterus. But same thing, I drove myself to the hospital. And when I got there, they're like, you are in labor. You're about 6 centimeters already. So I did go through labor and I gave birth to her. Despite the fact that she did pass, the labor it was really nice to experience a normal labor, like a labor without intervention. Like I wouldn't let them give me Pitocin. I wouldn't let them give me anything. Like I just wanted to go through labor naturally, and give birth naturally. It was a really nice experience. So like it sucks that she passed, but it was nice. Like it felt healing to have such a natural labor and a natural birth.
Yeah.
The same thing with her. She was too young. She wasn't even at the 24-week mark. Like she wasn't going to make it. So she did pass too. And then after that, I just told my doctor, I was like, I want to get my tubes tied. I don't want to mess with this anymore. But unfortunately, when I got my period back after I lost her, I just was bleeding profusely. So I saw what is it called? Like a high risk OBGYN. And he was like, I think that you should just get your uterus out because if you're bleeding this much now, who knows how much worse it's going to get, especially because it was already bad after you had Jolene. This could get life threatening. So let's just take the whole thing out. And within a week of that appointment, he scheduled me for the uterine removal. I did get to keep an ovary, just an ovary, but he took everything else. And that's what he was like, your uterus looked like absolute shit. I don't know why they put it back in you. I don't know why they did what they did. He's like, but they should have taken it out. It looked like a bag of shredded cheese. It was so scarred. Okay.
Oh my God.
Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? I know. And it's hard because, like some part of me wishes they would have just taken it out when they took Jolene out.
Yeah.
Part of me is like thankful that I did get to experience Emmy and Meadow as tragic and traumatic as it was. Because like I said, the natural labor and birth was really healing. It was nice because after I had Jolene and I realized I was like, I've never been able to experience a natural birth. Like I don't know what it feels like. So it was nice to be able to feel it. That way I have something to compare it to. And like, I can just so that way I have something to compare it to, and so that way I can just tell myself at least I got to experience something that I wanted to experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like a nice closing chapter on.
Yeah. And the nurses were so good to me too. Like the nurses both times cried. They took pictures of her. Like they did everything they could to make sure that we got to spend time with her and get all the things that we wanted before leaving her with them. So they were all really good too. It was very nice. It was so different from Jolene's birth because, the nurse was not very nice and she was not empathetic and nothing. So the nurse for both of their births were just, it was really nice.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe that's why, Destiny had me get pregnant with both of them because both of their births played a part in a piece of healing from Jolene's birth. It was
Yeah. So now that you're 4 years, Jolene has turned 4 in January, what does your everyday life look like? How are you doing emotionally? How are you doing everything?
I don't know. I plan day by day now. I don't plan for next week, the next month. I don't plan for 3 days from now. I just plan for today and that's it. Honestly, it's really hard. Nobody really ever asks how I'm doing, so I don't ever talk about me, but my mental health is it is shitty. Like I live in flight or fight all the time. Like I'm super controlling because so much of my life is out of control. So I control little things like loading the dishwasher and doing the laundry and bedtime and all the little things I can control, I do. Because I feel like if I don't, it'll make me spiral. I try really hard to stay as positive as I can. I'm we're both still alive. Jolene is doing so much better than they ever thought she would. My other kids, they're healthy, they're smart, they're strong, like they help out so much. Like there's so many things to be thankful for and I should be positive about. So I do try really hard to focus on that. But some days, like the really hard days, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I don't want to like keep going on. Like there was a day when she was sick a couple weeks ago. She just was throwing up over everything. And it was just so stressful. Like I felt like all I did all day was just clean up, throw up. At the end of the day, I was like, I really just hope I don't fucking wake up tomorrow. Like I just don't even want to wake up. I get those feelings a lot. But I mean, I would never act on them, obviously. I could never leave Jolie alone and my other kids. So I don't think that these feelings are abnormal. Talking to like a few other special needs moms of complex kids like mine, they all the same thing, that I don't think our mental health will ever be okay until our kids pass. And I don't mean that like viciously or anything like that. Or we're not a person. We're just robots. We're just existing to keep somebody else alive and keep somebody else healthy. And, I love her, so I would do that for her. Like, I would bend over backwards for her to make sure that she gets to excel in everything and be as happy as possible and be as healthy as possible and do all these things that she was never supposed to. So it's like, I'm okay with it, but it sucks because I don't even know, like, who I am. I don't know what I like. I don't even know what I would do if somebody gave me 24 hours to myself, honestly. Because there have been a few times where my dad or her dad has been like, why don't you just leave for a few hours? I'm like, where would I go? What would I do? Honestly, what would I go do? I don't know what to do. I have no idea. Like, if you're going to give me a few hours, I'm going to clean the house and do laundry and catch up on all the shit that I've been trying to catch up on for a week. Because I don't know what to do. So it's hard. It's really hard to explain. I just wouldn't wish it on anybody. Like, so many people are like, I don't understand. I'm like, good. You don't want to understand. The fact that you don't understand, consider yourself lucky. Because it's really hard. And it's not all negative. I know I'm making it sound so negative. I promise it's not all negative. Like the days where she hits a goal, or her really happy days when she spends all day laughing and giggling, or like when we have family movie nights, or we get to go to the aquarium or go to the park. Like there are happy times. There are good times. It's just, there's a lot of hard times too. A lot of hard times. Very different from parenting a neurotypical child. Like I never worried about half the shit I worry about now. Like I worry all the time. Like my son is strep throat and I'm like, is he gonna wake up the next day? Like if I give him this medicine, is it gonna like shove his liver down? Like think about everything, all these things that I never thought about before. The anxiety is intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do know who you are, and you are raising awareness for other moms so they don't have to experience the kind of neglect that you went through. So I hope you know that you are.
Thank you. I do try to like tell myself all the time, like what I went through so I can help other people not go through it. Like we went through a tragedy to help other people avoid going through a tragedy. It's really hard to focus on the positive and all the things that sharing everything about our story can and could do. I've had so many moms, like I can't even count anymore. And they're like, my doctor wanted to induce me and I'm a low risk mom. And after watching your videos and listening to your story, I knew that that's not something I wanted to do. And like so many moms sent me pictures of their babies that they had naturally without induction, without all the intervention and everything. So it's like healing too, like seeing all the babies that could have been hurt being born perfectly healthy into a family who loves them is really nice too.
Yeah.
It does help.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk on your platform a lot about the role Pitocin played in your rupture. So how did you determine that, since you did have your other births that were induced?
Honestly, one of the NICU doctors, he sat me down and like we talked about all this too, because he was really cool. He was really open. He was very supportive. Everything. He was such a good person. Not even a good doctor. He was such a good person. And like we went through all of this. And I gave him my records from my first births and talked about all of them and showed him everything. And that's where he was like, I want to show you all of the risk factors to Pitocin. I want to talk to you about all of the risk factors to intervention. Like, I want to show you all this stuff. He's like, it's just too coincidental that for your first birth, you had almost no Pitocin. Your second birth, you had almost none until the very end. And your third, you had like a standard dose. And then your fourth, you had this much larger dose. And the absolute worst thing happened. So, right, there's really nothing that can pinpoint it, but it's like all the signs lead to it. The fact that right there, the FDA lists it, the NIH lists it, evidence-based birth, like everybody talks about how a induction with Pitocin can rupture your uterus. Even on a small dose, it's much rarer. But once they get to like 14, 16, 18, 20 milliunits is when you're looking at fetal distress, uterine ruptures, mom's blood pressure plummeting, all that stuff. He's like, so if a labor is going perfectly fine and then an intervention is used, you can almost definitely pinpoint it to whatever intervention was used. Like, it sucks that there's no test that can be done to prove that Pitocin does rupture so many uteruses, because, maybe that can make a difference in the birth for future women, for the future generations. Maybe they could make it illegal to use it as much as they're using it. He's like, they're not going to, because it's just, they get more money, more interventions, more money, and more interventions. Like, if a birth ends in a C-section rather than a 2-hour pushing vaginal birth, it's easier for them. They can move on. So he was like, it does suck that there's no test to prove. He was like, but all the signs are there. He's like, if you can pinpoint it did.
Do you know how many mils you got up to?
I don't know exactly. Coincidentally enough, I can't find it in my record, but when I looked at my strip, I was at 14 at the second pop-off. I was at 14 at the second pop-off when I was delivering vaginally. I do know that. But I can't find what they started at, how often they increased it, what they increased it, if I ever got a break, if they ever went down, like what they did with it. It just, the only thing I see is 14 when the second pop-off happened.
Yeah.
It's a little crazy. I don't know why that's not in there, but it's right there on the strip. On the strip, not in the record. But
yeah.
Snatched.
Maybe. Did you, I know in the other podcast we listened to, you talked about how you couldn't go after them like legally. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so we tried to sue them. We tried to sue them with multiple different practices, 2 different practices. The first group of lawyers we worked with, we went in there, she was still in the NICU. It was right before my birthday. It was in February 2020. And they didn't close the case out until, I think it was March 2021. So it was a while that we tried to bring justice. But they said that because the records are what they go off of. They go off of the record. What they can hold, what the judge can hold in his hand to look at, to back up his decision, is what they're going to look at. And he's like, if you looked at these records, it doesn't match your story. He's like, but if you looked at her injuries and your injuries, it matches the story. So he was like, it's really hard, He's like, the judge is going to want something he can hold. Pictures of a videotaping, third-party testimony, your records to be right, everything. He's like, the judge is going to have to hold something on your behalf in order to make a decision or even go to court. We had nothing. It was just us at her birth. The last birth was like a family affair, like there were so many people there. And I was like, I don't really want it to be like that this time. Let's just have just us. Let's go in, no phones, no nothing. Let's just enjoy the labor, enjoy the birth, and then just go home. So we didn't have any family there. We had no friends. We had no people calling. Like, we had our phones on Do Not Disturb, and we were just hanging out trying to enjoy it. So we had no proof to back anything up. The same doctor that I talked to about the Pitocin, he did write a letter on our behalf stating that with his professional medical opinion, he felt that the story was absolutely accurate. If you match up Jolene's MRI, the extensive injuries, my injuries, and everything, he said, he wrote a letter defending us, saying that he definitely felt like they were negligent, completely negligent. But it wasn't enough because, again, it's with these kind of cases, it's really going to come down to what can the judge base his decision off of. He's going to need evidence from them and then evidence from us. And we didn't have anything. Like, we were just like, we don't have anything. We have nothing. We literally have nothing. If anything happened with the other people, Gannon, turn that down. This other practice, the same thing. He's like, you really have got to give me some evidence to prove your story, because these judges aren't just going to base their decision off of what you're saying. They're going to look at these records and see that according to these records, these doctors did everything they should have. They acted appropriately. You never complained of pain. You were perfectly fine. You were pushing fine. And then all of a sudden you just pass it. So they're like, there's nothing that we can do because the records show that the doctors did nothing wrong, but you don't have anything. So it sucks because it just sucks. It sucks. It feels like there's never going to be justice for her.
Yeah.
Although I did find out that about 6 months after Jolene's birth, that L&D ward did shut down. Apparently there were multiple lawsuits against the hospital. Yeah. I found this out recently this year, that there were multiple lawsuits against the labor and delivery ward in the hospital. So it did shut down, but the doctor went to another hospital, like the neighboring hospital. Like, isn't that lovely?
Did you try to report the nurse to the nursing board or anything like that?
Yep. I did. I reported the doctor too, but nothing came of it. We have these records that show they were heroes, that my labor was beautiful and perfectly fine and nothing happened and all that. And because my birth plan stated I didn't want a C-section unless it was medically necessary. So they just used everything against me.
Well, it was medically necessary.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It was absolutely medically necessary. But because I had that little bit in there that said that I did not want to be offered a C-section due to exhaustion, they used that against me. They used it against me. And because I wasn't in any pain at all, my labor was beautiful on Stadol and I had no pain at all. Like, all I can do now is just laugh, because if I had no pain, I must be like a superhuman, because a rupture is one of the most painful things ever. So for them to state that I had no pain, I guess I'm a superhuman, because it's just insane. That's absolute insanity to me. It doesn't make sense. It just sucks that our system is so corrupt and so ass backwards that a judge wouldn't be willing to even just to listen, just to look at everything that we could use to build our case, even though we don't have evidence, rather than just look at what they have and be like, oh yeah, they're good. They're golden. You guys are shit out of luck. And another thing that sucks about lawsuits that people don't understand is that when a patient or a person has Medicaid, like Jolene has Medicaid, she's won a lawsuit before for something completely unrelated. A pharmacy gave us the wrong medication in the right bottle. We gave it to her and it almost killed her. It was an easy win, easy win. We didn't do any work. So she did win that lawsuit. But because she has Medicaid, we technically can't have the money. It has to go in a court. It's called a special needs trust. And we have to ask the court to use the money, and they can deny it. So it's not like we could use it to pay any bills or to take her somewhere nice or to go get her a new wardrobe or anything like that. We have to write a letter asking, dear Mr. Smith Judge, can we please use $5,000 from Jolene's trust to do A, B, and C for her? And they can deny it if they want. People think that when you win a lawsuit for medical stuff like this, it's just a check handed over to you, but it's not.
Right.
We also have to pay the state once a year to do the accounting, which I have to do. And then not only do I have to pay the state, I have to pay the clerk, and then I also have to pay fees from that account. So it's people they don't understand. It's not a check to you. Well, did you use it just to take care of her? I have to ask to use it. And it has to be there has to be a letter of medical necessity to prove why we're asking to use it. And then we have to prove that we are using it for her. When we got her a bath chair, it took months to do this. Months, because they were like, well, why don't you go through the insurance? I'm like, well, if we go through the insurance, she's going to go up to 6 to 8 months without this. If I buy it out of pocket now, I can have it within a week. So not only did her therapist, but 2 of her doctors also had to write a note stating the same thing. We go through the insurance, this could take months. If she just buys it out of pocket, it'll be at our doorstep in a week. It's so stressful. People don't understand that. I'm going to throw that out there too, because it is not just, here you go, here's your winnings, this is all yours. No, it literally goes in a court-appointed account and you can't really do anything with it. And if she passes, the state gets it. They get all of it. Every penny that's left in there, they get the whole thing. So it's like, it's crazy. You almost die. So you win a lawsuit because of that, because it's supposed to fix everything, and the money still isn't really yours. And nobody got in trouble either from the pharmacy issue. Nobody got fired. Nobody lost. Nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. People think that lawsuits are a fix at all, but they're not. It's supposed to hold people accountable. It doesn't anymore. So many times it just doesn't. It's just more stress for the people who have to file the lawsuit, reliving the incident over and over and over. Like, we did have to testify quite a few times, but it wasn't as traumatic as her birth. Like, if I had to talk about her birth in grave detail to a bunch of people I didn't even know, it might be a little triggering. But like the pharmacy thing, it was super simple. And it's just insane. Like, the lawsuits, they just don't do what they're supposed to. Nobody really gets reprimanded. And we have to pay all these fees from it. We don't even get it.
Yeah. Just beating your head against a brick wall.
Yes. Yes, that's exactly what it is. And it never sits right with me. Like, if she passes, they get the whole thing. The whole thing. That's also, I'm always like, let's find stuff to spend. Like, I don't want them to use it. Like, fuck them. Like, let's just find things that we can spend it on.
Yeah.
Or do.
Yeah. Wow.
The system in America is just beautiful. People always talk about, oh, this is a first world country. Like, we're so lucky. They don't really understand what goes on in the system. Like, working in the system, like attending births and stuff like that and teaching people about it. You just see so many things, like things, all the intervention they want to throw on people who don't need it. They don't need it. And then the cascade of intervention that happens after that. It's sad, but nobody bats an eye. Nobody's like, oh, well, you know what? Let's not do this because this can cause this. It's like, not just do it. And then we'll do this to you. And then we'll do this to you. And then we'll do this to you.
Yeah.
So many times. And induction leads to an epidural because the induction pain is so intense. The epidural bottoms out mom's blood pressure, and then that makes baby go into distress, and then it ends in a C-section. So it's like these cascade of intervention when the first intervention really didn't even need to happen in the first place.
And the C-section already costs so much more money than a vaginal birth does. So
yes,
good for the hospitals, right?
Exactly. It's so good for them. So good for them because nobody's going to ask, hey, what are your C-section rates? How many inductions do you have that turn into C-section? They know that nobody's going to ask that. Just people like us who work in birth, we're going to ask. But everybody else, they're just like, okay.
Yeah.
Like blindly trust
that life you first had with Lexi had it all right, Like, low risk mom, you're a young mom, you're healthy. Let's not do any interventions.
Yeah.
When usually I feel like OBs in the world now are like, you're low risk. Let's do this.
Do it.
Let's do that. Let's have fun with you.
Yeah, let's see how much we can amp up your body and really see what it can go through. No, you're right. That first doctor, I'm like, man, I wish I had, she was in Maryland because we lived in Maryland back then. I'm like, I wish I had just gone to her for the rest of them because the way my birth would have been beautiful, like my first one would have just been amazing. Like she hated intervention so much, she wouldn't even give me a episiotomy. Like I pushed with Lexi for an hour and 20 minutes and she would not. She just was like doing her massages and was like, let's take breaks. Let's put you in different positions. Like she was so about like physiological birth. Oh, I was being induced. It was a very like low intervention induction, whereas that shit did not happen ever. You walk in and they're just, here, let's just start you on 2 and then bump you up every 20 minutes and see what happens. And then push you to your limit. Yes, push you to your limit within the first couple hours without even like giving the body a chance. Like, body a chance. They can get more.
Yeah.
Good. I feel like the Arrive trial has really done some damage to obstetrics. That trial just,
yeah, there are so many flaws.
So many. So many. So many.
Let me go look that up.
I know what's going on.
Well, Katie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And thank you so much for like raising your awareness on Instagram. What is your Instagram, people? What's your Instagram handle so people can connect with you?
That's a really good question. Just all like, I don't know what. Let's see. It is Katie_Spinks_. So it's just a picture of me and Jolene and a bunch of my crazy videos. So it's just Katie Spinks with 2 underscores. I think that's my handle across all social medias too. Yeah. So on Facebook, it's Katie Spinks, and TikTok, it's Katie Spinks as well.
Awesome. So yeah, if you ever want to connect more with Katie, reach out to her on Instagram, and she always is sharing stuff about Jolene and her family. So always a good place to connect with her.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much. And thank you so much for what you're doing and getting the word out there and getting your story out there. And I hope just one day you can see justice, because it's not fair.
I hope so too. I don't feel like we ever will. I feel like the only justice that we're ever going to get is helping other people to avoid what happened to us. So getting justice through other people. It's just, I don't think it's going to happen, unfortunately. This is society these days.
Thank you so much. I know I've been following you for so long now. I'm like, oh, finally feels like she's my friend. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next episode.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and found it insightful and beneficial. Remember, the Golden Hour Birth Podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you. If you appreciate the content we bring you each week, consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform or sharing the show with your friends and family. Your support helps us reach more people and continue creating valuable episodes. If you have any questions, suggestions, or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, www.goldenhourbirthpodcast, or connect with us on social media. We value your feedback and want to make sure that we're delivering the content you want to hear. Before we sign off, we'd like to express our gratitude to our incredible guests who joined us today. We are honored that they trust us enough to be so open and vulnerable. We're grateful for their time and willingness to share their stories with us. If you're interested in taking the conversation further with us, join us on our Facebook group, The Golden Hour Birth Circle. We'll be back next week with another exciting episode, so be sure to tune in. Until then, stay golden and remember to take care of yourself. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Golden Hour Birth Podcast. Bye!